Hello everyone, and welcome back to Hobby Time. Today we're going to be going over the breeding behaviors and some of the things that the angelfish do in order to not only start breeding and spawning eggs, but also what they do as parents and everything that they do over the entire breeding process. So let's get right into it. This is going to be a quick fire guide. Obviously the very first thing you're going to want to have a male and a female, and you can tell the male and the female by a couple different ways. One, the male right here, the yellow one, female right here is the marble one. The male one will typically be bigger in size. If you look right behind, you can't see it in this photo, but if you get really close, right behind where these two angelic fins are, is what they call them, the veiled fins, there are breeding tubes. And the female will have a much wider, shorter breeding tube, and the male will have a much skinnier, smaller breeding tube. Another indicator is the actual veiled fins themselves. As they get older, these ones are still pretty young, but as they get older, the male's veiled fins will start to kind of fray, and it'll give the appearance of having multiple veiled fins. But the females will not fray at all. The females will stay one solid fin. And the last indicator that you can see is the hump right above their eye and right before their nose. The males will have more of a profound circular hump as well as a more circular body than that of the female. The female will have a relatively flat forehead to nose and have a more of a triangle shaped body than a circular body. So once you've gotten your females and your males, obviously you put them in the tank together and they will breed. But it's not as easy as that. They're not like any other fish where they just start breeding immediately once you have a male and a female. Angelfish are actually very particular. Once they've mated, they mate for life. So as soon as you have a mating pair such as these two, if I tried to take my male out and put another male in, this female will refuse to mate with that new male because she's already mated for life with this one here. So the key to getting angelfish to breed is to buy a couple not a couple dozen, but a handful of them as juveniles, usually about 6 to 8 of them as juvenile angelfish, really small, maybe 3, 4, 5 month old angelfish. And you want them to grow up all in the same tank. And once they start to grow to about 8, 9 months old or so, maybe as early as 7 months, you'll see that a couple of them will start to pair off. And once they've paired off, if you look at the big tank, I used to have 4 angelfish in this tank, and these two have paired off over on this side of the tank. They will claim a territory, and they will defend that territory from the other fish. So as your angels start to pair off, you're going to want to start to separate them. And once you know you have a confirmed mating pair, you kind of want to keep them by themselves because they will be rather aggressive, and they will not get along with other fish. So normally, if you get 8 juveniles, you'll end up with 2, maybe 3 mating pairs, assuming that you have an equal amount of males and females. So first things first, get your males and females, but get them as juveniles. I would never recommend getting adult angelfish in hopes to breed them because chances are they've probably already mated with some other fish down the line. And if you buy a male from one person and a female from another store, chances are you will never get them to breed because they've already bred with other angelfish. So get them as juveniles, raise them up, pair them off on your own. Another thing that angelfish are really gonna like is they like to have a tall tank rather than a long tank. So always try to get them as tall of a tank as possible. They say one angelfish should have a minimum of 20 gallons, and then as you go up in the amount of angelfish, make sure you have about 20 gallons per angelfish. Of course, that does not mean if you have a 100-gallon tank, you can only have 5 angelfish max. That's not the case, but you should never put an angelfish in less than a 20-gallon tank. I'd say if you have a 50 to a 60-gallon tank, you could probably fit 5 or 6 of them in there. If you had a 100-gallon tank, you could probably fit 8 or 10 adult angelfish in there, and that specifically just gives them enough room in order to swim around, defend territory, things like that. Because again, once they start pairing off, they're going to want to claim a section of the tank, and if the tank is not big enough, you're probably going to end up with a couple dead fish because they're going to fight themselves to death. So tip number 3, we'll get right into it. You want to have Some people use tall plants, long-leaved plants. Some people will use breeding cones. The angelfish, you're going to look for a flat, usually vertical or semi-vertical surface to lay their eggs on. As you can see, there's some eggs on this leaf right here, a couple white ones, which tell me those ones are the unfertilized ones. But again, I'm just going to let nature take its course on these eggs and see if these adults can raise the babies on their own without me getting involved in doing anything artificially. But anyways, they will find some kind of a vertical surface, such as a long-leafed leaf like this. They will find breeding cones. They'll find slates. I have a slate over here just in case they wanted to use that. Any kind of flat vertical surface they'll use, and in desperate cases, they'll even use the side of the glass. Typically not, but if they have absolutely nothing else and they really, really want to get after it, they will use the side of the glass to lay their eggs. Tip number 4, in order to help them lay their eggs, you want to give them a varied diet. So a little bit of protein, a little bit of plant-based foods. I give them a variety of tropical flakes, bloodworms, pellets, protein-based powders, things like that, in order to beef up their diet a little bit and give them some new foods, so that way they're not just eating the same exact food every single time, and they have enough of that protein in order to make the eggs. They have enough nutrients overall, and yeah, just feed them a little bit of everything. I even put some little zucchini in here for my plecos, and sometimes the angelfish will take a little pluck at the zucchinis, get a little bit of their plants and vegetables in, and yeah, varied diet will go a long way in helping these guys keep reproducing. Tip number 5 is, in order for angelfish to keep reproducing, not only do you need enough tank space, varied diet, good water parameters, things like that, you also want them to feel safe. So removing all other predators within the tank and anything that might cause a fight. Plecos are fine because plecos are peaceful. They're not going to bother the plecos at all. But if you have any other kind of fish in here, your angels are probably going to want to start a fight, not on purpose, but in order to protect their young. So remove any other type of swimming fish, anything that'll get near their eggs, near their business. Remove them all. So keep your mating pair separate. And angelfish will mate roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, assuming that you meet all the other criteria and parameters and triggers. Once they've laid their eggs, it'll take about 60 hours to 72 hours to hatch, so I like to say about 3 days. And once they've hatched, they become little wrigglers, and the parents will take care of the little wrigglers, try to keep them all in a nice little confined pile. So they'll find a little spot, maybe even on the leaf itself or on this rock or something. They'll move all of the babies over to this one confined pile, and they'll try to keep the babies there until they're big enough to swim on their own, which takes about 5 days after they hatch. But if any of them start to kind of crawl away, swim away, whatever you want to say, the parents will actually go get them and bring them back to the pile in order to watch all of them closely and at the same time. So again, every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, angelfish will usually have a spawn of eggs, assuming that you have a breeding pair and everything in your tank meets breeding criteria, they're fed well, good to go. The type of species of angelfish really doesn't matter. So tip number 6, 7, whatever we're on now. As you can see, I have a marbled angelfish right here, and I have a lemon angelfish over here. So 2 different variants, but it's overall the same species. Angelfish really don't vary in species too much, so they can all breed with each other. You can have blue angelfish, black angelfish, whatever. They'll all breed together, assuming that they do pair off. The quality of the babies that you get, however, those are going to vary. But in terms of getting a male and a female together, it doesn't matter what they look like. They will still pair, assuming that they want to, and once they have paired, again, they will pair for life. So a breeding pair of angels, if you buy them as a breeding pair, you're most likely paying 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 times as much as you would just buying the juvenile angelfish from any store or any local breeder. That is going to be it for my quick little angelfish breeding tips. If you've learned something, liked something, thought this video was any good at all, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Make sure you check if you're subscribed or not for any future content, and let me know in the comments what you want to see next or what you thought about this video. That's all I have. Peace.